All right. I guess that means you're feeling as tired as I am. I'll take that. All right. So what did we talk about last week? Anybody?
What was that? I think I missed it.
So what we talk about last week?
We talked about portfolio strategy and risk appetite and project charter versus portfolio charter.
Yeah. What is that? What are those?
So project charter initiates the project and they're the sign off from the executives that the project can start. And portfolio charter is a document that says they may be new portfolios are being added. That new portfolios can be added in all the time and will be modified.
What else?
Talked about the portfolio roadmap a little bit.
What's the roadmap?
It's sort of just a plan over time about which portfolios are going to take precedence and what's going to be applied to each specific one, and how each of those portfolios are going to align with your strategic goals.
Mm-hmm. Good. Anything else?
We talked about risk management, like how much a company is willing to risk for like decision making purposes.
Mm-hmm. And what would be a high risk portfolio versus a low risk portfolio?
High risk is like portfolios or programs that don't really have anything to do with each other, like taking on too many industries. And then low risk is like having one portfolio with like a bunch of technologies or like the same subject.
Right. Excellent. Excellent. That was good. Anything else?
So we also looked at like diversifying like all your different portfolios, like how the best way to bring them all back together and try and make them work together. That, or even if they don't, like as far as like if you got one idea for one, if you can transfer that idea into your other portfolios as well.
All right, perfect. I forgot to ask you all, how many people are anybody at the Wilkes-Barre campus? No? All right, good. Don't have to worry about it. All right, good. Let's see here, because we were actually supposed to do an exam this week. We're not going to do that. So everybody shaking their head. I see you. I see y'all. I see you. But the thing is, so I'm supposed to have a speaker come in. I have to let her know what week. So we're going to go through portfolio governance this week. And as I've been trying with other classes, for this first exam, it's going to be a group exam. Now, I know just as Sam said, my group exams are pretty difficult because I actually ask questions based on the PMP. So you don't just show up and answer the questions. Now I've had people fail verbal exams. I've had a few people fail verbal exams last semester. All right. So you have to come prepared. All right. And in most cases, you got one chance to answer a question. You know, now I would say that your peers can save you, right? But if you're completely off the mark, you fail. That simple, right? But in order for you to be completely off the mark, you have to have no clue what what you're talking about, because most of the questions, like most of these things we talk about, is subjective because it depends on the industry. You know, it depends on the industry. So I'll ask you a question, but if it's completely off the mark, I'm going to ask you to justify why. If you can't justify it, you don't know what you're talking about, so you fail. I mean, it's that simple, right? So like I said, we're going to go through portfolio management today. But for you know what, I'm going to save governance because governance is a good topic. Let me see here. Give me a second. I gotta fix my laptop tonight. This is crazy. Yeah, we'll go over portfolio governance today. There's 2 videos in here. Yeah, I'm not showing my screen. Of course, I'm not showing my screen. All right, so it says week 5, but work with me here. So like I said, we're supposed to do the quiz, do an exam this week. So we're going to go through portfolio governance. We're going to go over all these bullet points. Like I said, I don't do PowerPoints, but I do ask that you all go review these videos here. And then I don't know if there's a LinkedIn learning video. I don't know if there's LinkedIn learning this week. I have to double check. I'll double check before we stop. Let's see here. But while I'm doing this, so if you look back at your project management courses, what is project governance? You remember? Yes, no, maybe?
It's kind of like the guiding principles and kind of like the rules that you work within.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So if I look here, man, my dates are messed up. I am just terrible. My goodness. All right. So if you go into the syllabus, you'll have to do these 3 LinkedIn learning assignments this week. And again, so once we prepare for the exam, I'm going to ask questions based on what we discussed, you know, within the class, and then there's also going to have questions coming from LinkedIn Learning. So that's because I know you can game LinkedIn Learning. I know, and because some students think they're slick, some of the questions I ask are going to come from LinkedIn Learning. All right. So go into the syllabus. I'll upload these before we break. But you're gonna have to review these, then upload those certificates, and then that's gonna be your assignment this week. All right.
Weren't those the 3 that we did last week?
It was? Oh man. That's strategic memory. Oh, maybe so. Yeah, right here. Okay, so you're just gonna review these. Yeah, sorry. So yeah, so just the videos. Yeah, so you just have to review these 2 videos here, and then the video, then the exam's gonna come from these videos. All right. I'm just seeing if y'all are paying attention. Like I said, this class ain't gonna last long because I'm hurting right now. Oh, also, if you were able to, did anybody watch that session today, the LinkedIn live session or Facebook live session?
Yeah, I did, but I don't know if it like recorded that I was there because it only had told like notifications came up on the side of like who joined.
Yeah.
And only like 4 of them came up, and I saw that there were like 18 people watching at one point. So I don't know if it tracks it or not.
Yeah, it's like 50 something people in there. So yeah, so like I said, send me a message if you attended that session. Send me a message. I'll also send the link because I think the link, there's a Facebook link, but then there's also a link within supply and demand chain executive that I'll share later. So I'll upload it. If you just put a little blurb in the text and say you watched it, give me a summary of what we talked about, you'll get your credit. All right. So as Sam said, project portfolio governance is essentially the guiding principles of a project portfolio. It is traditionally, so in project management, you have a project management office. You also have a project portfolio management office. You know, so for example, you'll have an office, a PPMO, that will provide the guiding principles for an organization's portfolio. So for example, going back to my example of Infor, you know, Infor has 20 something companies, you know, within their portfolio. So you'll have a kind of a group that provides oversight at the portfolio level for that organization. Okay. So they provide the guiding principles in terms of how should projects be ran. Okay. Now, again, going back to Janelle's point, if you have one standard, if you have one portfolio of all technology companies, that's pretty easy. But if you have a company like GE where their portfolio is kind of all over the place, that would be very difficult. But you still have to have some kind of governance structure. You know, so using those two examples, what would a portfolio governance structure look like for example, a technology company? And while you're talking about that, I actually might have one from Infor. Let me check. So what do you think?
Do you mean like what are some guidelines they could go by?
Yes. Like, so if you work for a project portfolio management office, what do you think the guiding principles would be for an Infor who have all these companies in portfolio in different segments? And then what would it be like if I had a GE where I have finance, and I also have healthcare, and I have medical devices and computers and things like that?
Well, the GE one I feel like would be a lot more broad and like not detailed, because you can't like aim for one guideline for all the different programs. But for like the technology one, maybe like responsiveness or like convenience.
What do you mean by convenience?
Like easy to like the technologies are easy to navigate.
Okay.
Keep
going. You're actually it's actually pretty good. You're actually surprising me. To be honest.
Yeah, I think those are like the two that I have.
Okay. Anyone else? That was good. I say surprise in a good way, because it's like you have insight into the industry already. That's what I meant. Anyone else?
I would also. Oh, go ahead.
Okay. I would also say a lot of innovation would be a guiding principle.
Mm-hmm. What do you mean by that?
Always trying to create new technology or innovating older technology to make it run better.
Mm-hmm. Excellent. What are you going to say, Sam?
I was going to build off the kind of ease of use aspect and say that you need to have good customer service, because, you know, a lot of people aren't really technologically literate. So, you know, people might have a hard time using your software if that's what your company sells. So you got to have some type of, you know, consumer to business communication set up.
Yep. Anyone else? Has anyone heard of this concept within their organization? All right. So actually, see, they say when I go in my vault, I always have gems in here. All right, let me see here. So I actually have, although this is technology focused, I think it'll help drive home the point. All right, so here's one So this is for data governance. All right, so what's the governance in terms of GE? You think? This one may not be completed. Give me a second. I got different versions in here.
Maybe like operations, like each program like is focused on a certain operation. I don't know if that counts.
True. Yeah, it could. Because you have to have some kind of structure and some kind of hierarchy, right? Yes, this is good. All right, so I gotta make sure this one's not completed. There's another version in here somewhere. All right, this may help present. There we go. Can you see that slide? Can you see that PowerPoint? I know because sometimes this thing switches and it freezes when I show another screen.
No, we can still see you.
Yeah, it's just you.
You see my ugly mug, huh? I heard you. That's so rude. All right, let's see here. Let's try this. Do you see that screen? All right.
Yeah.
So this is kind of going to what Janelle was referring to, where this is kind of a technology governance structure. So we primarily, so before I moved out into the industry and went into higher education, I was working with organizations on selecting their ERP applications. Before that, I actually implemented ERP applications. So one of the main things that we did a lot of work on is discuss their data management strategy. So billion-dollar organizations with multiple locations around the world, and they would acquire different companies. So that means that they would potentially have different ERP applications. So they would have different types of data, different data sets, different tables and things like that. So we would essentially have to create a master data management strategy. So from a governance perspective, this is essentially transferable to what you would do within a portfolio management. So if you take portfolio management and you look at it from a data perspective, everything is based on data, right? So you would look at the framework, you would look at the different departments within an organization. So you would look at the finance department. Opportunity to cash is more of the sales department. You would look at design to deploy. Design to deploy is primarily focused on manufacturing. Supply chain, procure to pay. Procure to pay is more of the purchasing department. Planning to deliver is more for also production and engineering and things like that. And then you also have the more holistic finance, strategic finance and things like that. So you have these different hierarchies or different departments or different segments. Segments is the best word. Where if you bring that up a level, that's where you would look at it from a project portfolio perspective, right? So what we would have to do is we would have to create a governance structure where we would split certain things out, right? And that whenever we talk about portfolio governance, that's essentially what all governance is. You're creating a framework, you're creating standards where these standards, these approaches are applicable to all companies within an organization, right? So if you look at it from a data perspective, this would be a master data management governance structure, and we would do the same thing across all organizations, right? So again, N4 would be easy because they would have somewhat of the same structure. and they would use somewhat of the same base code, if you will, somewhat of the same tables. But if you were to use the GE, they would have totally different systems, and this would be very difficult, in my opinion. You know, because some of those organizations in GE may not have some of these things. So if I look at GE Finance, they probably wouldn't have a bill of material, because bill of material is related directly to manufacturing. GE Finance would not have anything to do with the bill of material. So how would you create a governance structure for that? You couldn't, right? So that's one thing that you would have to look at when you look at a project governance structure. And then you would also kind of create the hierarchy of, you know, what does this governance look like, if you will. So how many suppliers do I have for each organization? How many customers do I have for each organization? What is the management hierarchy for my organization? Who makes the decisions within the organization? What are the primary departments within the organization? What are the different business and product lines for the organization? So once you map all this out, then you're able to get a bigger picture within the organization, and you're able to essentially create, as you can see down here, you can create a governance team. So again, this governance team is more data related, but you're going to have a governance team for a variety of different processes within a company. All right. Any questions on that? All right. Try to provide some kind of context, but so as we talk about the portfolio governance, we talked about the guiding principles. I would say the guiding principles is primarily centered around the standardization across the organizations. You know, so regardless of how complex, you know, or how different those organizations are, you have to find commonalities. Again, going back to our GE example, that can sometimes be very difficult to do. Also, you want to look at the design factors for portfolio governance. And the issue with portfolios is that, let me see if I can find another one. Where's Truck Hero? Truck Hero is a good one. Give me a second. Let me go back to my vault. Let's see here. Well, I can just go to their website. So here's another one I worked with. Truck Hero. So we worked with this company, and if you look at these brands, that's pretty much this organization's portfolio, right? So they essentially acquire all of these companies, right? And we had to create a portfolio governance for all of these companies. But the thing is, it was somewhat simple in that they acquire aftermarket truck accessory companies. All right. Some of these, if you own a truck, you may know ARE, you may know Husky Liners, X-Tang. I think people are, that's another brand. Undercovers is another brand that I worked with. Lund, they just acquired Lund before I actually left. So Lund actually put them over the $1 billion mark. So they grew into a $1 billion company selling aftermarket truck parts. You know, so, and actually I would be very interested to see if they're working on some aftermarket accessories for cyber trucks, but we'll see about that. I still do have a contact there that I speak with. So, but again, the point is that we had to create a governance structure for this organization. But again, just like the N4 example, it was very simple because all of these companies almost did the exact same thing. They were in the exact same market, right? So that's where the commonalities were very easy, and because we were moving all of these companies on the same system that we assisted in them selecting, that was a huge deal. But that standardization, that master data management governance was also somewhat easy as compared to others. Now, some of the data in some of these companies were absolute nightmares, but in order to create the plan, it was somewhat easy. So, Blada, have you heard of Hershey's having like a project management office or a portfolio management office or anything like that?
Kind of, but like not really. Most departments just have like their own independent like project manager.
Oh, really? Oh, but you don't know if that project manager reports to anybody, correct?
I think it's just like a chain where like my manager reports to someone that like runs the entire program, which he reports to like I guess a higher up than him. But like I really haven't met the other person. I just met the one that he reports to.
Okay, interesting. Yeah, because I was wondering how the structure at Hershey's was. Catherine, have you heard anything like this with the company you work with?
No, I haven't heard anything about it, but I'm sure Enterprise does have a solid structure just because everything's kind of in the same market as well with the transportation industry.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Excellent. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I don't know per se if we have like a portfolio management structure, like a team like that, but we definitely have we sort of have regionalized like project management offices. We call them lean solutions, but they just do project management. And
Really?
they're kind of assigned to, yeah, I mean, I don't know. We call them lean solutions, but really what goes on is that they're
They're glorified project managers.
yeah, they just are responsible for implementing projects and things that that certain branches need, but it's all broken down towards each district. So each district has a team.
Mm-hmm.
So that's
But you don't know who those individuals report to.
No, I don't know who they report to. I might be able to find out, but I don't know offhand.
Okay, interesting. Anyone else have anything like this? This what's called is killing me. All right. So as I say, that's where we have the governance design factors of, how are we going to design this portfolio management governance structure, if you will. And it's all going to depend upon what type of organizations that you have within your portfolio. All right. Also, you have the portfolio governance roles, and that's essentially why I asked the question of the individuals that are in that are in those particular organizations, because there's going to be certain roles within the portfolio. So you're going to have an executive sponsor for the entire portfolio. You're going to have a portfolio management office that's going to guide and direct each organization, and to ensure that that organization's PMO. So you have the portfolio PMO, and then you have the organizational PMO. All right. So the portfolio PMO will actually be directing each individual company's project management office, and that's where those roles come into play. So you have just like you have a hierarchy within an organization, you'll have a hierarchy within this portfolio for governance purposes. All right. So once again, just review these two videos, and that's pretty much all I have. That's all I had to talk about. So in terms of this week. So once again, going back to the first week. Going back to the first week, we introduced you all to portfolio management. You know, we talked about the Unilevers, we talked about the PepsiCos, we talked about the Hershey's, you know, we talked about GE and all those organizations. And we say that, you know, that is, and we talked about the Elon portfolio, you know, where yes, you have all of these organizations and those and the products that we use from these organizations, but there are all, in most cases, these companies are a part of the portfolio. You know, you'll also hear them referred to as subsidiaries, for example. So for Truck Hero, all of these brands are subsidiaries. All these brands are subsidiaries of Truck Hero. Right. And just as with my example of Infor, you know, Truck Hero doesn't produce anything. They essentially just started acquiring companies, and they grew to $1 billion aftermarket truck part company by acquiring companies. Right. So they're in the business of acquisition for the most part. I was whenever we were doing our software selection. This was 2 years ago now. Yeah, this was 2 years ago. We were working with them for 6 months, and within those 6 months, they acquired. Let me see here who they acquired. Like I said, they acquired Lund. They acquired Lund because that delayed our project. And so Lund is pretty much one of the biggest names within aftermarket, you know, truck parts and things like that. And I think they acquired another company. I forget which one. But they pretty much acquired 2 companies in 6 months. Right. But Lund was the biggie. You know, so whenever they did that acquisition, you know, they had to consider that new company within their portfolio. They had to say, okay, what's going to be the governance structure with this new acquisition? Now, another thing that we haven't discussed is that in some situations, in rare situations, but in some situations, the company they acquire has a governance structure that's so good that they would actually adopt that structure and apply that structure to all their other organizations. That's very rare, but it has happened. Right now, it also has happened where, because like a company, I'm moving y'all around on here so I can see. So when you have a company as large as Lund, like a multi-million-dollar organization, I think they were over 100 million, to be honest. Whenever you acquire a company that large, it may be very difficult to include that company into your current structure. So because of that, there may be a lot of change management that comes in, that has to come into play to fit a large organization like that into that company structure. Another perfect example is Oracle. So I'm pretty sure a number of you have heard of Oracle, and they acquired NetSuite. So NetSuite's probably one of the biggest applications in the ERP space, and NetSuite was so massive within a space, and they had their own process, they had their own procedures. I work with individuals that actually my manager, one of my managers, like from like 10 years ago, he went to be a VP at NetSuite, and he said, Justin, we're like 3 years into this acquisition, and we still operate as separate companies. Right after 3 years, there's no governance. They still have their own governance structure. They still have their own PMO. You know, they're kind of on their own island. because it takes time to embed that structure that way into a large organization that has established, their particular principles and environment and culture, right? So that's another thing. That's possibly a drawback. That could be considered a drawback into acquiring organizations and when considering project portfolios. So for example, if Hershey's were to acquire, I don't know, Blader, what's a brand that Hershey's doesn't own that's like massive?
Honestly, I don't know. It's either they own it or Mars owns it,
It's like, no, we own everything.
or somebody else owns it. So like, unless there's something that comes up, but I haven't heard of a brand that's massive enough that one of those two hasn't picked it up yet.
Yeah. Oh, so Ghirardelli in San Francisco. Like if they were to acquire them, just hypothetically, probably won't, but if they were to acquire them, there probably would be a big problem with including a company like that within Hershey's portfolio. It may take years to include a company like that within their portfolio, right? So that's one thing. That's one consideration whenever organizations are acquiring other companies. But whenever you have the decision makers and they see profitability, that's the last thing they're considering. Oh, well, how's our governance going to be integrated within our product? They don't care about that. Whenever they see dollar signs, they don't care about that. And it's always along the lines of we'll figure it out later. Right. And that's why Oracle and NetSuite are in the situation they're in now. Where they're kind of in on their, although NetSuite is owned by Oracle, NetSuite is still kind of operating like an independent organization. So eventually they'll get there. It probably might be another 5 years before they get in kind of brought into the Oracle culture. But that's another thing. So we'll talk about culture later on. But that's another thing that my ex-manager said, where we had a family culture, and Oracle's more like it's so massive, employees are just a number. So it's like we want to stay separate from Oracle. He said we operated differently. He said that it's my fear that we're going to lose some good people whenever we try to transition into that Oracle, cog type system, type culture, type governance. So that's another thing. That's another thing that needs to be considered when we're talking about portfolio management, portfolio governance, change management, and things like that.
Question.
Yes.
Well, and like you said about the drawback, like I kind of look at it, I'm like, is that necessarily a bad thing for a company to just within that same portfolio to operate its own way if it's still maintaining the same profit level as like the first time you acquired it?
In
Like,
most cases, no. In most cases, no. Because I'll say that in most cases, those companies were acquired for a reason. I would say 80% of the time they're acquired because they're struggling. Well, let me back up. In most cases, they're either one, acquired because they're struggling, or two, that was the objective of the founders from the beginning. Right. So I just did a podcast the other day, and I explained that you're going to start seeing a bunch of these AI companies getting gobbled up by the SAPs, by the Oracles, by the Facebooks, by the Googles. There are so many companies that Facebook and Google have acquired that you hadn't even heard of. You don't even see. But that's for a reason. They embed their functionality into Facebook and Google. And these people who develop these algorithms, they get paid like $100 million, but that was their objective the whole time. They were developing these algorithms with the goal to get acquired by Facebook or Google. You know, it's actually kind of like there are incubators out there that is their objective. Build something to get acquired by Facebook or Google. And then you have these employees of, 30, 45 people, like developers from MIT and all these other places, that are getting sucked into this, this environment of just numbers of thousands of people, where you kind of had freedom with a startup to essentially do what you want to with no structure. It's like the Wild West. But the Wild West, whenever you're developing things like that, are beneficial, because that's how you innovate. But then you actually get brought into the Facebooks and the Googles, and you have all this hierarchy. You have all these approvals that's going to take, a month to get approved, where in this pre-acquisition world, I just did it. Send an email to the founder and say, check this out. Oh, this is excellent. Put in production, run it. So to answer your question, there's good and bad. All right. It just depends on the situation. It depends on the situation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I got that. Like when you're talking about like the Wild West, when they just like you had like that freedom to do whatever you want. But I feel like once you reach like a certain level, that kind of Wild West mentality eventually is going to come down crashing.
It's going to come down crashing. It's going to get you in trouble too.
Yeah. So like at that point, that's good to be acquired and just get into like that hierarchy where everything has to be approved.
Let's get into it, because that's an amazing point. So it's like, and that's a big problem. That's a big problem within the industry right now, and scalability. So it's like, when is the point where you go from the Wild West and you go from innovating, and you go from this team of 10 brilliant people who just kicked off this company in their frat house? That's how some of these companies get started. They get mollywopped and they just start coding. That's how some of these companies get started, right? But they have that mindset. They have that frat house or sorority house mindset, and they start these companies out, and they grow them to like $50 million, $10 million, $50 million, and then they get approached by these billion-dollar organizations, right? And they've never had that structure, that governance. They've never had that governance, and some of them struggle. So my question to you all is, how do you handle that? So if you work in a project governance office, and you get these sorority sisters who kicked out just this amazing application, but they're just coding without approval, but the stuff is phenomenal. How do you handle that? How do you rein them in?
I feel like you still give them room to like be creative and innovate, but at the same time, you still gotta like check and be like, yo, like I get you're trying to be creative, but at some point, like you're gonna cross some lines where you don't have like that collaborative within the company, where it's just like you're doing your own thing and not really following what the rest of us are doing. Like maybe just create a separate like department for them where they can do their own thing. But at the same time, you kind of evaluate whether or not to push that out, or like to be like, yeah, this is good, but like go back and look at it again.
Yeah, exactly. That's an excellent answer. And that's actually what Google's doing. So Sam, like I said, I asked you all to see if you can get on Club. Sam dropped into a Clubhouse room the other night, and but there's another room in there. It's called Talk Nerdy to Me, and that one room, there's this one individual. She works for Google, and I think I've mentioned this, and she ensures that Google AI algorithms aren't biased or discriminatory. So that's essentially what Google did. So Google is essentially trying to rein in these developers, like the most brilliant developers in the world, literally. you know, from they're plucking them straight out of Stanford. You know, they're plucking them straight out of MIT. And they're letting these people innovate. They're letting them be free. But once that code is ready, right, then it goes through her department for review before it gets released in production. You know, so that's essentially their governance structure. You know, where you let these people innovate, you let these people, you know, code essentially what they want to do, but it has to go through an approval process before it gets pushed into production. You know, so do you all have anything like, so the reason why I asked this question, Blada, is because Intel had, so I was doing work for Intel, I was consulting with Intel, and they actually have like a space where employees can just go, and they pretty much have anything at their disposal from Intel to innovate, right? And I think once or twice a year, they'll have this whole room of innovations that Intel employees have done. And I was told that there's like so many patents that just come from Intel employees. And they get paid, they get a cut out of it. I don't really like it because they get like pennies, they get like peanuts. When Intel's making millions off of this stuff, they might get like 50,000. Hell, what is that? But the thing is, you know, they have the opportunity to innovate, and Intel wants those individuals to fail, you know, and create new developments. And I think that one of the students from University Park contacted me last semester, and she had an offer from Oracle, and she had an offer from 3M. And within 3M, it was a rotational program, and she knows I do a lot with sustainability, so that's why she contacted me. So it's a rotational program. She gets to go to a number of different facilities around the world, but the most important thing that she mentioned to me was exactly that. So 3M has a department just like Intel, where they let people innovate, you know, and then they get, I think like scotch tape or duct tape or something like that was created by an employee, you know, and look how many billions of dollars 3M made off of that. And it was created by an employee. It wasn't created by an engineer. It wasn't created by a scientist. It was created by an employee, you know? So, you know, that's another thing. So when you all are leaders, start thinking about that. Let your employees innovate. So Blada, I was wondering, do you see anything at Hershey's like that?
Basically, the team I work on, we're focused mainly on like finding like new innovative solutions for like the end goal and problem about like self-checkout lanes, and like kind of like the checkouts going away, and how do we like innovate to like solve that issue. And we kind of have like free range to work within our budget to kind of like come up with new ideas in terms of like NCAP and different things to kind of just sell candy, what's going to grab the shopper's attention.
So you don't deal with the candy, you deal with the technology.
Yeah, we deal with the technology and displays and like
that's actually very interesting. But how does that work? So you just partner with like grocery, like, so let's just say that you found like a solution you think is going to work for self-checkout. Do you just like work with grocery stores and Walmarts and Targets to say, hey, look what we made? Is that how that works?
Essentially, we come up with something. We kind of build a sell story where my manager would go up, have a conference with Walmart, be like, hey, this is what we came up with. I think if we place it here in your store, we're going to have uplift, which is going to help us and also help you. You want us to test and learn and see, like, give you a result and see what it is. And essentially, they allow us to test for like about 6-month period. And then after that, if they see like the result is actually like what they were kind of like projected, they buy in more, and then we kind of just go from there and then go to the next store and be like, hey, we did this at Walmart. Would you like this to be introduced in your store? And like after we hit up the big grocery stores, usually all of the ones at the bottom usually all buy in. Yeah. Most of the time we test at like lower grocery stores before we like actually approach Walmart.
Very interesting. Very interesting. So how many of those get like rolled out? Like how many of those ideas get rolled out versus the ones that are just scrapped?
I've been here for like 3 months, but like
Ah.
the previous ones, like they just came up with this new like rhesus statement end cap, which is just like it just has massive, it just has rhesus on it, and like it's been getting tested since the summer, and it just got approved to be like rolled out within the summer. So like it usually takes about like 6 to 9 months when an idea comes to it. If it doesn't work out, we usually just scrap it and just kind of put it either in the chocolate world where we thought it was a great idea, but like necessarily like the store thought.
So chocolate world's the land of misfit toys.
Basically whatever we thought, like if it's like super expensive, we just put it in chocolate world, see what the consumer like. It usually like stays there within 1 or 2 years, and then it kind of gets puts away until it needs to come up again. Maybe it was ahead of its time, or maybe it was just like,
That's
nah.
hilarious. But that's actually one thing that we talked about on Clubhouse one night, where like one of the individuals that I moderate a room with on Clubhouse. So she does a lot of robotics in the fashion industry, and she said that like 8 years ago, there were companies that were developing the same exact stuff that's being rolled out right now that people are going crazy over. She was like, those companies were just ahead of their time. And like with me, I'm trying to figure out with this much innovation that we're getting now, and we're like mind blown. It's like, what is going to be ahead of its time now? Because I think there's some things that are coming out where like people have absolutely no interest in, and 5, 6, 7 years from now, they're like, man, and that's kind of why I try to have the mindset that I have is I want to think of the most harebrained thing I can think of, because those if you think about it, those ideas are the ones that hit. I mean, who would have thought a non video platform would be the biggest social media app around right now, right? But the thing is, so it's kind of so Clubhouse. I know I'm very biased about Clubhouse, but I'm trying to encourage you all to get on there because there's a lot of Sam. What other rooms have you been in?
I've been listening to a lot about Bitcoin just because that's an area that I would like to learn a lot more about. There's the one, I think it's called like Black Bitcoin Billionaires. They have a ton of stuff on there.
Everyone talks about that one. I hadn't even got in there. I'm in a group, but I haven't been pinged. I've been trying to wean myself off of Clubhouse so I can get some work done. But
yeah, they have a room once a week that's all like, it's basically like Bitcoin 101. Like it's all, they just take questions from anybody, and people come in with like literally zero knowledge about it, and they'll answer questions about it. So that's what I found pretty good.
Yeah. I was in a room with I know this is going way off topic, but I was in a room with CJ Wilson. So CJ Wilson, he's a pitcher for like the Rangers, for the Anaheim Angels. And he's like you probably heard the term Bitcoin maximalist, in that room, where people are like just crazy about Bitcoin. But CJ Wilson was a Bitcoin maximalist, and they were in the room talking about when Bitcoin was like, they were like, I remember back in the day when we were arguing that Bitcoin's not going to hit $2. These guys were in the room talking about buying islands, not even being dead serious. These guys are buying islands with Bitcoin. So learn about Bitcoin. I'm not providing you investment advice. I will say if you're even considering it, just try to know that just have that money that you are willing to lose, because this thing is very volatile, but it's also a long-term investment. All right. My biggest gain was in crypto 2 weeks ago with Dogecoin. I bought Dogecoin on January 2nd. Elon posted a tweet, that thing popped, and I got out. I got out. I got it for like I got it for 100th of a cent. I got it for 100th of a cent. But I put in a value that I know that I was willing to lose if it went down to zero, for example. If it like shut down, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm out. I took a risk, big deal, right? But it went to like I was teaching. It went to 7 cents, and someone texted me and said, "Justin, check Doge." I was like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Check Doge," in all caps. So I was like, "All right, let's take a break." So I checked it. At that time, it was like 5 cents, and I hit sell all of it. But then by the time I sold it like 4 cents. But now it's at 7 cents. It hit 8 like a couple of days ago, you know. But in my opinion, it's too late for those looking at crypto. It's too late. It's too late for Doge. You let that thing drop, or you gonna get caught with the bag. Like they say in the room, you get caught with the bag. You're gonna be in trouble. So, but yeah, I'm not providing investment advice, but do your research. But I would say that even if it's not crypto, you need to start looking at investments and things like that, because you're gonna get people that say that, you know, fiat, you know, it's losing its value. The dollar is losing its value, and yeah, I agree with that, because we just printed money out of nowhere twice in the last year. How are you just gonna make money out of thin air? The U.S. government we had to pay that back, right? So the dollar, the value of the dollar, I feel is losing its value. You know, so, and again, do your research, because Harvard, Yale, and Brown and University of Michigan invested in Bitcoin about 3 weeks ago. Elon put 1.5 billion out of Tesla and put it in Bitcoin. And that's how Bitcoin, that's why Bitcoin went up. Bitcoin went up like 20% Monday, because Elon said he invested 1.5 billion in it. And that thing went crazy. That's why I'm an Elon fan. But anyway, that took some off top. But the thing, just do your research. I mean, I am not providing investment advice. This is being recorded. I am not providing investment advice. But like I said, just look at it. You're seeing more and more organizations investing in it. It's being more widely adopted. But another thing is, blockchain companies are about to go crazy right now. I just had a call with my partner. He's actually the chief security officer of the blockchain company. Blockchain companies are going to start springing up out of nowhere. So and you don't have to code. If you just have a basic understanding of blockchain, you know, you can actually understand use cases in blockchain, and you can have a very successful career. If you're developing blockchain applications, they're going to need project managers. Think about it, right? And once these blockchain companies get very large, like N4s and like the ERP companies, they're going to start building portfolios of blockchain companies. They're going to need a project portfolio manager. Think about it. You know, so I know we went way off topic on that one. My fault. My apologies. But I'm just trying to share the knowledge of what's going on in the industry. So again, talk about the standard portfolio management. You know, we talked about a number of different organizations and their structures. We got the Elon portfolio, we got Hershey's, we got PepsiCo, we have Unilever, we got the train wreck known as GE, and also N4, for example. So also, you want to understand the difference between the hierarchy of the portfolio, and then the program, and then the projects, right? What's the difference? Give me an example. Not everybody at one time. Don't fight.
So the portfolio is kind of the overall structure of what like one company owns a bunch of other subsidiaries, and then each of
What's
those.
an example?
Well, with Unilever, they own. I'm trying to think of specific companies. There was. It's basically just a bunch of like what you would find on a grocery list. All those type of
Yeah, exactly. That's I like that analogy. I'm gonna
Yeah.
start using that.
Yeah. And then each of those individual subsidiaries would have their own projects underneath them.
Mhm.
And
And then so what are those subsidiaries considered?
the subsidiaries are the programs.
All right. What's the project then?
Whatever something that one of those subsidiaries would want to implement or innovate within their brand, or maybe perfect one of their processes.
Perfect. Thank you. Good job. All right. So yeah. So you understand that hierarchy. I mean, I'm gonna drill that. I'm gonna drill that to the end, because I mean, if you understand that hierarchy, I mean, the rest of this stuff is simple. I mean, if you went through the project management class, the rest of it is simple. Also, we want to understand the principles of project or portfolio management. That's going to be in the book. Also, you need to understand, how do we structure a portfolio? Do you all remember the example that I provided with the portfolio structure, and how you can structure a project's portfolio based on the company's chart of accounts, if you will, or how they want things to be reported. So I think Catherine had an example at Enterprise where, oh man, I got my notes here. Yeah, right here. So you see, I keep all my stuff. I keep all my stuff. So Catherine said Enterprise has rentals, dealerships, vans, trucks, and roadside, right? So, but we said that it all depends on how those organizations want to see that in the reporting, right? They want to say, so for example, if the rentals fell within the dealerships, where like only the dealerships did rentals, for example, they sold cars and they did rentals, but that's the only place where you could get it, just hypothetically, then everything may fall under that dealership subsidiary, right? Or dealership program. Or if they wanted to keep it separate, you would have the rental revenue, you would have a dealership revenue, you would have the van revenue, you would have the insurance revenue, right? So it just absolutely depends on how you want to see it. I think that Blada showed had an example where you could have a situation where in some cases, some things might fall into one bucket, but then in other cases it may be separate. Or I forgot who it was. I think it was somebody. But you have that, and again, it all depends on how you want how the leaders want it reported, how the shareholders want those things reported. All right. Any questions? Anything to add on that? All right. So we also talked about the role of the portfolio manager. We all want to ensure that we have a portfolio manager, and that portfolio manager oversees all of the programs within that portfolio. So Unilever would have a portfolio manager. Unilever would also they would most likely have a portfolio management office. They're so huge, But to Janelle, like in Janelle's example, right? You could so your two companies, do you know how many employees that other company has, the architecture company?
I think they have like 600 and we only have like 400, something like
Okay,
that.
so they have about 1,000 employees roughly.
Yeah,
That sounds like a lot, but from a project perspective, that's really not a lot.
we
Right?
only have 3 project managers at
Really?
our company. Yeah, Yeah,
What
because
about the,
like, what'd you say?
what about the architecture company? Are you saying like 3 total across both companies?
Oh, no, I don't know how many they have, but I know we only have 3.
Okay, interesting. What else were you gonna say?
I was gonna say like our projects take so long that we don't really have a lot, but like we charge so much for the machines that we make a lot of money, I guess.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. How much do those machines cost? Just curious.
Well, we have different ones, but the wheel is what we're known for, and I think they sell them for like, I want to say like 300,000 around that. But yeah,
Interesting. How long does they take to manufacture?
usually probably like 9 months to a year.
Interesting. How many of them do you have going at one time, you think?
Well, usually we only sell like 2 wheels every other year, but with COVID, um, our sales like spiked. I think we sold like 6 wheels just this year.
Hmm.
So it really depends because a lot of people are doing like outdoor work and stuff, and we make a wheel that makes like the polywood that you lay on like gardens and stuff. But a lot of like outdoor wheels have sold. So
Interesting. Excellent. So yeah, so you'll have a portfolio manager. So I was gonna say in Janelle's case, you might have a portfolio manager across both companies that oversees both, both organizations, but maybe not. But that would be one example of where you would have a portfolio manager. All right. And then you also have, other roles. So whenever you say other roles within portfolio management, that's whenever we're talking about that portfolio management office. All right. So that's where that comes into play. Any questions on that first chapter? All right. So instead of in terms of the portfolio management lifecycle, we're going to talk about that ongoing life cycle. What's the acronym for the project management life cycle? What's the acronym and what does it stand for? I'm gonna drill you out on that one too.
I plan every meeting carefully. So there's initiation, planning, execution, monitoring and controlling, and closure.
Ooh, that was nice. That was nice and quick.
I missed that the one week, and like every day I thought about it. I was like, man, I don't know.
You see that. See, I have achieved my goal. When I drill you, you get it. You work to get it. Y'all make me proud. I tell you. All right, so you also what's the portfolio management information system? What's a project management information system? And what's an example?
So I guess from a portfolio perspective, I guess you could say that any ERP system would be. So like if you would use SAP if SAP was the best at helping you like manage your portfolio, implement certain projects within in certain programs, and just kind of establish like an interconnectivity, like whatever does that the best, and what computer software you use for that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, yeah, and so yeah, some of these ERP applications, well, most of them will have a project management tool in it. It'll have a PMIS tool in it, but because Microsoft Project is so well known, most of them will integrate. Most of them will integrate into Microsoft Project, where you could build information in Microsoft Project, right? And then you can feed it into your ERP system. So you say, okay, why are you operating two systems? Well, that can then feed information into your financial system. So now you can track spending, and now you can create visibility within the ERP application. So that's why you would have that information, and you'll see a lot of organizations doing that. And although that's not the case, although that's not the this is not an HR class. You know, you'll see the same thing in Workday. If you are familiar with Workday, I'm pretty sure some of y'all have heard of that application, because pretty much everyone uses it for HR and for you to do your healthcare and things like that. So and the reason why I mentioned Workday is because everyone used Workday. These ERP providers said, well, we're going to stop building out a HR solution because everybody uses Workday. Let's just integrate with it, right? Let's just map it, plug it in, and hit a button, and we don't have to worry about it anymore. It's almost getting to the same. It's getting almost to the same thing with Microsoft Project, where they can just simply integrate with Microsoft Project. Also, the same thing with Salesforce. So Salesforce with customer relationship management, you know, to track customer communications and things like that, because Salesforce has pretty much like dominated the market in CRM software. Now most ERP providers, they stop developing their CRM tool, their CRM modules. Now they just integrate with Salesforce. They don't want to compete with Salesforce. They can't compete with Salesforce. So they just integrate with it, right? So you're going to see, I would say that you're going to see more of that, you know, and we're also seeing the integration of artificial intelligence, and more robotic process automation. So chatbots. Now you're seeing chatbots coming to ERP systems. So you're going to see things like that. Like I said, you're going to start seeing companies get acquired in that space. So yeah, so that's the understand the phases of a project, because those phases of a project is the same within a portfolio, right? Now you just have to, with a portfolio, you just have a boatload of phases to track. Because I have my portfolio, right? I have all my subsidiaries. And then under the subsidiaries, I have a bunch of projects under each one, right? And for each one of those projects are going to be in a different phase. So that's why you essentially need that portfolio management office. Because so in Janelle's case, if luckily they don't have that many projects going on. But if there were a global organization and they had, so Janelle, is each wheel considered a project? Because some companies do that. Some companies treat each like wheels a project.
Yeah, each wheel's a project, and then we have like our basic like extruders. So like they make a lot of machines, but the wheel is just what we're known for. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. And each one's treated like a project, right? It's not like a job or order or anything like that. It's like a project.
Yeah, I mean we call it a work order, but each project manager is assigned to that work order, so it's a project.
Yeah. So, and the reason why I say that is, so I'm thinking like ERP terms. That's why I asked that question, because that's what I did. That's what I did within the industry, where we would create like large machinery projects like that. We would create projects because there would be multiple work orders tied to that project. You see what I'm saying? So I would have this massive wheel, $300,000, right? And then I would have these work orders attached to this wheel. And then also within those work orders, I would have purchase orders attached to each one of these work orders to get the products in. So now all this stuff is tied together, right? And then essentially it all gets rolled up to that wheel. So I can track my cost and things like that.
Yeah, we just do it in like stages. We put the project in stages, and like it'll have like the work order, the number, and then slash like 01, 02, 03, and like that's what stage it's in, and that's what stage we're buying it to.
Yeah. So, but again, all those 01, 02, 03 gets rolled up to like the parent, if you will, right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that parent is like the project, and then this 01, 02, 03, that's kind of like your stage or your. Yeah, I got it. All right. Yeah. So yeah, that's essentially what we did within the industry, and that's how you would track projects at the program level. All right. So again, that's the project life cycle, and then strategic management. See, I thought we'd be done by now, but you know, I'm a talker. My apologies. We're almost done. All right. So listen, last week we talked about strategic management, and we talked about, if we look at a portfolio from a strategy perspective, we look at those acquisitions for an organization. We look at how the companies we're going to acquire are aligned with the mission and vision of the organization. How are they going to fit in with our current? How are they going to fit in with our current portfolio, if you will, right? So going back to Truck Hero, all of those products align with their portfolio, right? So if Truck Hero were to come in and try to bring in a I don't know, like what's like the most extreme, like bring in like wheels or something. They have nothing. It's still in the same industry, right? But they have nothing to do with wheels. So you would say, okay, yes, it's the same industry, but it's nothing to do with aftermarket trucks, right? But then someone else will say, well, it's aftermarket wheels. Okay, you have something there. So it's like it's does it fit or does it not? It could fit, but it's not a kind of aligned with what their brand is, if that makes sense. So that's where you kind of get where, okay, yeah, we're going to expand into different industries and things like that. And yes, that will be beneficial. But in other cases, again, going back to my GE example, that could prove to be detrimental. There's no alignment. You don't have people within your organization that has any knowledge of finance, of running a finance company, but yet you're going to buy one, right? And that's another thing where GE was acquiring all these companies because they found organizations that were struggling, and they seen them as a bargain, so they bought them, right? Without, I don't care what industry you're in. If I see a bargain, I'm gonna buy you. I'll figure it out later. That's what GE's mindset was, and it did not turn out well, right? So that's another consideration whenever you're going to look at your portfolio strategic objectives. Do you want to stay in your lane and stay with organizations that you know about, or you're going to look for organizations that are a bargain, regardless of industry, and try to acquire them? So I would say VC, like venture capital firms, they're good at that. They can pull that off. Like in some VC firms, if they find something interesting, they don't care what industry it's in. They buy it. They invest in it, right? Or they acquire it. But when they acquire it, they'll go and bring somebody in that's the best in that particular industry, the best in the business in that industry. And they'll give them equity, and they're brought in as an advisor. But again, it depends on what your strategy is, if that makes sense. But there's a lot of different, there's no one size fits all approach to strategies. Like I said, VCs, they do it all the time where they have unrelated products within their portfolio. But the thing is, they bring in the best within that particular industry to provide, advising and insight, to see if it's a good deal, a good company to acquire, or to see to have them along the way to actually build that company out and sell it to someone else. I was just on the phone call this morning with the individual where they bought a data scientist company in like early 2000s. They bought them for 300 million. They bought them for 300 million. They flipped it 5 years later, sold to IBM for 1.1 billion. Right? But the thing is, they brought the best. They brought in the best. They brought in the best data scientists to evaluate this company. Oh yeah, that's a good deal. Then they brought in this individual. They brought in this individual. I talked about him today on the that's the one I talked about that worked with Fauci, Dr. Fauci. They brought him in. He worked as a VP of I think VP of IT or something like that. Fix the infrastructure of the organization, got the organization running for a few years to get it ready to sell. Boom, pop. Give me my check. Thank you for your service. You know, so you have you have those situations, and that goes into the portfolio strategy. You know, then you also have your risk appetite. So GE had a high risk appetite. I would say VCs. You could say VCs have a high risk appetite, but then you could also say they do their due diligence before they acquire companies, right? So you have to look at that strategic vision. High risk, high reward type thing, right? So you'll have these VCs that say that yeah, I invested over 100 companies, but only had 3 winners. I had I had Uber, I had PayPal, and I had like Reddit or something like that. So those 3, made them billions over the millions they lost. So again, what is your risk appetite? And then we talked about the project charter earlier today at the beginning of this class. We talked about the roadmap, and then we talked about the strategic alignment, where we want to align and standardize the processes of all of these organizations within your portfolio. All right, so that's what we're going to talk about. That's what we're going to get tested on. So we're going to get tested on next week. And again, we're gonna also talk about project governance, which we discussed today. All right. So again, normally, like I said, we hop on. How many people are in here? There's 8 people. All right. So whoever's not here, you need to tell them they need to be here next week. All right. I'll tell you that much. So we're gonna it's probably gonna be the whole time. It's probably going to be the whole time. I'm going to call on people randomly, and I'm going to ask them random questions. Now I'm going to give them a chance. I'm going to give them a chance to provide their answers, but you can phone a friend. You can phone a friend, and you can have some of your peers save you. Right. So because of that, you can all collaborate. You can all collaborate and work with each other throughout the next week and prepare for it. But like I said, it's not that difficult. I mean, we go through everything. I prepare you as best as I can, but I do need to assess your knowledge of these concepts. All right. Fair? Any questions? Jared, you've been quiet.
No questions here.
All right. Y'all have a good week. If you have any questions, just shoot me a text. I'll hang out for a couple minutes if you have any questions. See you.
Hey, Professor Goldston, I just figured
They got out of here quick. Oh man, let me stop recording. They got out of here quick. All right.
Started,